Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host, with another marvelous video. Welcome half-bloods, gods, Percy Jackson fans, and creatures of all kinds to yet another exciting marvelous video. Today, we're taking a stab at the various monsters and creatures that lurk in the night and even stay out in the open with the help of the mist. Percy Jackson has encountered a lot of monsters during his time, from the legendary Minotaur to the fearsome Medusa. He's battled and slain many deadly creatures from Greek mythology. Rick Riordan has weaved a majestic tale in the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series out of the ancient myths that take place in the modern world, and we're excited to take a look at the creatures that Percy Jackson and the rest of the demigods have faced. Grab your weapons that are made out of celestial bronze, imperial gold, or Stygian iron, and get ready to face some monsters. So, without further ado, welcome to Marvelous Videos, every monster and creature that appears in the Percy Jackson franchise explored. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Agrias and Oreus. We start the list with a pair of twins known as the Bear Twins. According to the myths, Agrias and Oreus were the illegitimate children of Polyphont, a maiden who joined the hunters of Artemis, the companions of the goddess Artemis who have sworn oaths of loyalty and maidenhood to her. Polyphont sought refuge with Artemis after the goddess of love Aphrodite commanded that she must marry. But Polyphont couldn't escape Aphrodite, as she was put in a trance by the love goddess and made to fall in love with a bear. This led to the birth of the twins with a bear-like appearance. So, how did Percy Jackson encounter the Bear Twins? The 8-foot-tall bear monsters that wore nothing but blue jeans, covered in thick brown fur with feet like paws, all their teeth like pointed canines, snout for noses and claws for fingernails, were seen on the Princess Andromeda, the ship that Percy Jackson, along with Annabeth Chase and Tyson, sneak onto in the second Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters. The trio encounters the assistance of Luke, the son of Hermes, who was supporting the Titan of Time, Kronos. Again at the end of the book when Oreus is commanded to deal with Annabeth and Grover, while Agrias is in charge of keeping Blackjack, who's a Pegasus, under control. Agrias was portrayed as the one who had more intelligence among the two, since he gave various duties to his somewhat dumb brother, such as punishing himself, which required Oreus to smash his head on an object or endure severe physical pain. He also reprimanded his brother once, which caused him to whimper. Antaeus. Moving on to the next monster on the list, we have the son of the Earthshaker and Mother Earth. Yep, it's none other than the self-proclaimed favorite son of Poseidon, Antaeus himself. Born as the son of Poseidon and Gaia, Antaeus was an opponent that Hercules wrestled with in the myths. Situated in the deserts of Libya, Antaeus would wrestle with any passerby and collect his opponent's skulls to create a temple in honor of Poseidon. In the fourth Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth, Antaeus is the ruler of an arena in the mythical labyrinth built by Daedalus. In order to attain safe passage through the arena, Percy Jackson fights against other monsters to provide entertainment to Antaeus. It's kinda like the ancient Roman Colosseum, where gladiators fought to the death. When Percy refused to kill another demigod who was his opponent, Antaeus got dissatisfied, and Percy challenged him to a fight. As the son of the goddess of Earth, Antaeus could heal all the wounds Percy inflicted upon him using the sand on the ground. Percy, realizing that as long as his opponent was connected to the ground, he couldn't inflict damage, uses chains hanging from the ceiling of the arena to trap Antaeus in the air and kill him, a monster that was only defeated by Hercules in the myths. Antaeus was a deadly opponent who was proficient in unarmed combat due to his super strength and healing capabilities. Arachne. According to mythology, the tale of Arachne is a tragic one. Arachne is often used as an example of what would happen to mortals if they dared challenge the gods. A gifted weaver who challenged Athena, the goddess of weaving, and lost against the goddess Arachne, was turned into a hideous spider-like monster for her arrogance. Arachne is considered the mother of all spiders, and due to her rivalry with Athena, every child of Athena is cursed with arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. In the third Heroes of Olympus book, The Mark of Athena, Annabeth has to follow the Mark of Athena, a series of clues left by previous generations of the children of Athena that leads to the Athena Parthenos, a statue of Athena that was looted by the Romans and kept in an underground shrine that becomes the lair of Arachne. The spider monster laid out traps that killed any child of Athena that followed the Mark to find the statue. She even instructed her followers to do the same. It was Annabeth Chase who followed the Mark and made it all the way to the end, where she fought Arachne, who guarded the statue. Annabeth used her intelligence to trap Arachne in her own webbing, but the underground shrine started to fall apart as Arachne's webbing came apart. She pulls Annabeth and Percy Jackson into Tartarus, the bottomless pit where monsters go to regenerate after they're killed. Arachne tries to ambush the pair of demigods in the pit, but is slain by Percy. Arai. The next monsters on the list are the Arai, the offspring of Nyx. the embodiment of night. They're female curse spirits that embody the curses put by the dead on those guilty of their deaths. When an Arai is killed, their curse falls on their attacker. They're commonly confused with the Hydras or Furies of Hades. Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase encounter the Arai as they make their way across Tartarus in the 4th book of the Heroes of Olympus series, The House of Hades. So, how does the Arai cast a curse on their attacker? Well, for example, in the book, when Percy kills an Arai, he's cursed with a wound in the gut, which is how he killed Geryon. Percy is also inflicted with the cure of Phineas, whom he killed by tricking him into drinking Gorgon's blood, which is poisonous. Annabeth is cursed with blindness from the curse of Polyphemus and the curse of Calypso, which was abandonment. The Titan Iapetus had to come to the rescue of the demigods and help heal the injured Percy. Argus. Now, let's meet the first friendly monster that shows up on the list. The head of security at Camp Half-Blood, Argus. A monster with 100 eyes, Argus was created by Hera to create Io, a mistress of Zeus that he transformed so that he wouldn't get caught by Hera. According to the legend, Zeus sent his son Hermes to release Io, but it proved to be difficult as Argus was a brilliant security guard with his 100 eyes. Hermes eventually succeeds in his task by putting Argus to sleep. Argus is credited with slaying Echidna, the mother of all monsters, when she was taking a nap in a cave. A part of his duties at Camp Half-Blood, Argus often drives demigods to their quests. He was fired along with Chiron in the second Percy Jackson book, The Sea of the Monsters, as an intruder broke in and poisoned Thalia's tree, the barrier that protected Camp Half-Blood. I mean, anyone would be fired from a security job if someone broke in while they were on duty. The rumor among the demigods at Camp Half-Blood is that Argus doesn't speak, as he even has an eye on his tongue, and he doesn't want people to see it. Argus is often seen in the series driving demigods around and whenever they wake up from being unconscious. Basilisk. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, this monster isn't the Basilisk from the Harry Potter series. These snake-like monsters, whose name translates to Little Crown, are monsters that make up the heir of Polybotus, the giant created by Gaia to defeat Poseidon, the god of the sea. He's kinda like the anti-Poseidon. In the second book of the Heroes of Olympus series, The Son of Neptune, Polybotes is angered at Iris, the goddess of rainbows, who refuses to serve him and his army of monsters and releases 3 basilisks from his hair to prevent people from entering rainbow organic foods and lifestyles, which is otherwise known as ROFL. The basilisks are defeated by Frank Zhang, son of Mars, as a favor to Iris in exchange for treating the injured Percy Jackson. So, what is the appearance of these monsters? Well, they're small green snakes with an extendable white spiked collar around their necks. Their eyes are a delicate yellow color and they can spew fire. They're also extremely poisonous. Basilisks were claimed to have the power to induce death with a single gaze in mythology, which is the case in Harry Potter, although this doesn't appear to be the case in The Son of Neptune. Carnivorous sheep. These are not your ordinary sheep, they'll bite you. The herd of sheep kept by the Cyclopes Polyphemus on his island in the Sea of Monsters, the carnivorous sheep sat guard over the Golden Fleece. They're separated from Polyphemus's ordinary sheep by a rope bridge and ravine, since they'd eat the other animals otherwise. Only Polyphemus can approach them, and even then, the sheep become restless if he doesn't bring some form of meat for them to eat. In the second book of the Percy Jackson series, The Sea of Monsters, Percy Jackson and his friends are in search of the Golden Fleece in order to cure Thalia's poison tree. But the Golden Fleece was under the guard of the carnivorous sheep, who attacked like piranhas and were as big as hippos. When they attacked their prey, only a pile of shining bones would be left behind. In the end, Tyson had to make his way over to the Golden Fleece, as he shared similarities with Polyphemus, who was their owner. Centaur. It's time to meet the half-man, half-horse creatures that roamed across ancient Greece and then the modern United States, the Centaurs. In mythology, Centaurs are the offspring of Centaurus, the son of Ixion and Nephili. They were created by Centaurs mating with Magnesian mares. Centaurs are best known for their conflict with the Lapiths, a civilized Thessalian tribe which arose from their attempt to kidnap Hippodamia and the other Lapith ladies on the day of her marriage to Pirithous, king of the Lapiths and son of Ixion. This conflict became known as the Centauromachy. Centaurs were also known for being excessive drinkers and carousers, violent when drunk. Another clan of centaurs was spotted in Peloponnese, where they clashed with Heracles over the wine of their brother Pholus, who had provided Heracles with hospitality while he was on the hunt for the Erymanthian boar. Heracles slaughtered the majority of the hostile centaurs with arrows dipped in Hydra blood. Poseidon gave sanctuary to the surviving centaurs on the Malayan Peninsula in southern Laconia. The Cyprian centaurs were a different kind of centaur. They're bull-horned centaurs who were born from Zeus when he mistakenly impregnated Gaia during his failed effort to seduce Aphrodite. They're friendlier than the centaurs that Heracles meets. The most famous among the centaurs is Chiron, who was the son of Kronos. He was the immortal trainer of heroes such as Achilles and Jason. In the Percy Jackson series, Chiron is the activities director of Camp Half-Blood. He comes to the rescue of Percy and his friends in the second book, along with the Party Ponies, a huge group of centaurs. Each state has its own chapter. The Party Ponies are crazy and enjoy root beer like their counterparts in mythology. Chiron, although a centaur, is not a party pony. They're famous for mounting boxing gloves to the points of their arrows. They make use of paintball guns filled with celestial golden dust. Kronos regards them as a nuisance because they continue to derail his schemes in the final Percy Jackson book, The Last Olympian, in which they played a huge role in the Battle of Manhattan. Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld, the hound of Hades, the eldest child of Typhon and Echidna, says it's time to meet Cerberus, the three-headed guard of Hades' domain. In mythology, King Eurystheus commanded Hercules to bring back Cerberus as proof of his strength and courage as his 12th labor. Hercules returned to Cerberus to fight him bare-handed after making a deal with Hades. Cerberus was enormously powerful and vicious, his three heads rapidly biting and snarling, but Hercules managed to wrestle Cerberus to the ground and finish his Herculean task. In the first Percy Jackson series book, The Lightning Thief, Cerberus first shows up as Percy Jackson. Grover Underwood and Annabeth Chase reach the underworld. Percy attempted to play fetch with him, using a bedpost from Krusty's waterbed palace as a stick, but flung it into the river Styx, which enraged Cerberus. Annabeth managed to tame him with the help of a giant red ball and some obedience school skills. While Percy and Grover slipped by Cerberus, Annabeth played with him using the red rubber ball. Cerberus is described as a terrifying and enormous black and mahogany Rottweiler dog with 3 heads, who surpasses even the biggest hellhound with ease. Cerberus has reddish eyes, sharp teeth and nails, and a snake for a tail, just like his sister, the Chimera. Cerberus is also partially transparent and grows increasingly visible as one approaches death. Charybdis, the guardian of the entrance to the Sea of Monsters, along with Scylla in the second Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters. Charybdis was the daughter of Poseidon and Gaia. According to the legends, Charybdis was extremely loyal to her father in his never-ending rivalry with Zeus. She rode the waves after Poseidon had caused a storm and led them onto the beaches, burying entire communities, submerging fields, drowning woods, and claiming them for the sea. She gained so much territory for her father's kingdom that Zeus became angry and turned her into a monster for all time. Odysseus had to travel between her and Scylla during his voyages back home to Ithaca. Charybdis' mouth is obscured by mist, smoke, and the ocean. She attaches herself to a black reef topped by a little fig tree. Charybdis has slimy lips and mossy teeth that are roughly the size of a rowboat. Charybdis can gather up huge quantities of water like a whirlpool and then release it in a blast capable of destroying anything around a half mile. She'll suck in anything close when pulling in water, which includes sharks, schools of fish, and gigantic squids. If a ship approaches too close to her, it'll be sucked into the vortex she creates or killed by the resulting blast. Chimera, one of the few monsters that Percy Jackson was unable to defeat. The Chimera is a monster straight out of a child's nightmare. The Chimera's appearance is that of a goat with a lion's head, a mane that looks caked with blood, along with a diamond-back snake-headed tail that is 10 feet long and grows out of its shaggy behind. A larger female version of the Chimera has a goat's body with a lion's head with horns that are 6 feet long sticking out of it, along with a king cobra-headed tail that's 15 feet long on her back. The Chimera releases lethal venom via bites and can breathe fire. He has a rhinestone collar when masquerading as a chihuahua, which he keeps in his actual form. He has a dog collar that says, Chimera, rabid, fire-breathing, poisonous. If found, please call Tartarus, extension 954. According to the mythology behind the Chimera, the monster was defeated by the hero Bellerophon with the help of the legendary Pegasus. The child of Echidna and Typhon, the father of all monsters, had Percy cornered in their fight, and he had to escape by jumping through a hole in the St. Louis Arch, made by the creature itself. It's a deadly monster that took on the form of a chihuahua before using its monstrous form against Percy Jackson. It was seen traveling in the company of Echidna, who was sent by Zeus to test Percy. Cherry-colored cattle. The sacred cattle of Apollo, which were bright red, were taken by Hermes, the god of thieves, while the new god was only a baby, according to mythology. As the god of prophecy, Apollo quickly discovered who had stolen his livestock and carried the slumbering Hermes to have his fate judged by Zeus. While Hermes initially denied everything, he was forced to admit the truth and confess. Zeus, on the other hand, didn't punish him, since he thought the story was amusing and insisted that he just return the animals. Hermes did this and eventually created the lyre that he gave to Apollo as a gift. In the Percy Jackson series, they're housed at Triple G Ranch, a ranch on which some creatures thought to be extinct in Greek mythology are preserved, since Apollo lacks the time to manage them. Before Percy mistakenly walked there, Apollo had no idea that the owner of the property, Geryon, was growing the cattle for slaughter. It was also stated that they were used to feed Kronos' monsters. Clasmonian Sow. Next up, we have the Clasmonian Sow, which was described by Percy Jackson as the possible girlfriend of the Erymanthian boar that made an appearance in the third Percy Jackson book, The Titan's Curse. According to Annabeth Chase, no hero had defeated the huge pig with pink wings and skin like a flamingo and was capable of destroying everything around her with its poisonous breath and humongous size. Percy defeated the pig with the help of Blackjack, his trusty Pegasus, a few lionstone statues, and a statue of Hermes, which were automatons created by Daedalus. The Clasmonian Sow doesn't show up much in Greek mythology, except that it terrorized the region known as Clazomenae. The Sow was used by Kronos in the Battle of Manhattan in the 5th Percy Jackson book to demoralize the weakened demigod army and take them out in their desperate condition. However, Percy stepped up to the task and slayed the beast, which threw a wrench in the Titan of Time's plans.
It's chill. The barrier's holding.
Colchis Bull. The Colchis Bull. These monsters were a creation of Hephaestus and showed up in the 2nd Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters. 2 of the Colchis bulls penetrated the defenses of Camp Half-Blood due to the fact that Thalia's tree was poisoned. The bulls were rampaging across the camp and were eventually defeated by Tyson, who, as a Cyclops, was immune to high temperatures, and Clarice, who led a group of demigods against them. The bulls were tamed by the children of Hephaestus and were seen being used to create the tracks for the chariot race. The Colchis bulls were presented to King Aeetes as a gift in Greek mythology. They're constructed of bronze with silver horns and rubies for eyes. When Jason arrived in Colchis in search of the Golden Fleece, King Aeetes ordered him to yoke the Colchis bulls and plough a field. The dragon's teeth were then to be planted in the field. Jason was able to withstand the searing fires of the Colchis bulls because of a potion supplied to him by Medea.
He's my kind.
You disgust me.
Cyclopes. Cyclopes are one-eyed monsters that have made an appearance in almost every book in the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series. These monsters are often considered ugly by people and are avoided by many. Cyclopes are typically abandoned by their parents after they're born in order for them to learn how to fight for themselves. They mainly live in cities, where they're considered outsiders or mistakes, and they don't always get it right. Nobody wants them, so they grow up on the streets without control. Most monsters fear or shun Cyclops because they're immensely strong, even when they're young. Tyson, who's portrayed as a newborn Cyclops, accidentally scared away other monsters, resulting in Percy being spared from being attacked for a whole year. Annabeth remarked when the Lystrygonian giant assaulted Percy in the company of Tyson that it was astonishing that he even bothered to attack with Tyson present. A great deal of Cyclops are Poseidon's children who live underwater. A lot of them work at the forges alongside Hephaestus, such as Tyson, who's become the general of Poseidon's forces. Cyclops are creatures with immense strength and durability and are capable of withstanding high temperatures. They have superhuman hearing and are able to mimic the voices of other creatures perfectly. Elder Cyclops. The earliest Cyclops were Uranos and Gaia's sons. They were known as the Elder Cyclops. Uranos despised his ugly children and incarcerated them in Tartarus until Kronos toppled him and freed them. During Kronos' reign, however, he flung the Elder Cyclops into the pit once more. Zeus freed his siblings with the help of his mother, Rhea, and the gods battled against Kronos and the Titans. During the process, the Elder Cyclops were freed and battled in the First Titan War. The Elder Cyclops ended up being the gods' weaponsmiths. They fashioned Zeus's Master Bolt, Poseidon's Trident, Hades' Helm of Darkness, Artemis's Moonbow and arrows, and Apollo's Sunbow and arrows. The Elder Cyclops often helped Hephaestus, the god of forging, in his forges until they were slain by Apollo in retaliation for Zeus, killing his demigod son Asclepius, who later became the god of medicine. Northern Cyclops. A type of Cyclops who are the offspring of other Cyclops such as Margasket, the mother of Sump and Torque. They frequently consume heroes and demigods. Northern Cyclops, also known as Hyperborean Cyclops, are often smarter than Southern Cyclops and use their manufacturing abilities to create weapons such as the noisy warhammer and the exploding axe. They built weaponry and equipment for the Titans during the Second Titan War. They often encountered Roman demigods. In the first Heroes of Olympus book, The Lost Hero, Jason Grace, along with Piper McLean and Leo Valdez, encounter the Northern Cyclops, Margasket and her sons, Sump and Torque. They're seen again in the second Heroes of Olympus book, The Son of Neptune, traveling with Polybotus and his army. Southern Cyclops. Southern Cyclops are largely Poseidon's offspring. They, like Polyphemus, are shepherds in the Sea of Monsters. They, like the Northern Cyclops, frequently devour heroes and demigods. They appear to be less intelligent than their brothers and Northern Cyclops because they never use their constructing abilities. Polyphemus in the Sea of Monsters has no idea what a mango is and is frequently duped by Grover. He also struggles with math. Cynocephaly. A part of Octavian's, the augur of the Roman demigods, forces to invade Camp Half-Blood. The cynocephali were monsters with the head of a dog and the body of a man. They were an Indian and African tribe with whom the Romans struck a tentative truce several centuries ago. They were hired by Octavian from the triumvirate holdings during the Second Demigod Civil War in the final Heroes of Olympus book, The Blood of Olympus. The monsters also made an appearance in the Trails of Apollo series, in which the god of the sun, Apollo, becomes immortal and has to fight against evil Roman emperors that walked the modern world. Medea's Sun Dragons. The Sun Dragons, referred to as Phil and Dan, were the wicked sorceress Medea's two sun dragons. Helios, her grandfather, gave them to her for pulling her golden chariot as a gift after she slayed her children with Jason, the Argonaut, who refused to marry her. She fled to Athens using the chariot and dragons, where she married Theseus' father, Aegeus. In the first Heroes of Olympus book, Medea built an underground department shop in Chicago after passing through the Doors of Death, where her sun dragons were stored in giant sundial compartments. She attacked Jason Grace, Piper McLean, and Leo Valdez using the dragons when they arrived at her store. The sun dragons of Medea are said to be the size of a camper van, but not very huge. They have golden scales and their nostrils emit yellow fumes like sulfur-fueled trains. Their fangs are said to be like porcelain fired in blazing kilns in their jaws. Anyone who looks into their brilliant orange eyes will be paralyzed. Drakon. No, it's not a dragon. Drakons are huge, snake-like creatures that are several millennia older than dragons. One mythical drakon was Sosipolis, the son of Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth. As a youngster, while guarding Elis from the Arcadians, he transformed into a drakon, which prompted the Arcadians to flee in terror. Following his victory, he became the Eleans' patron and defender. In the Percy Jackson series, several drakons are mentioned. One of them is the Ethiopian drakon that Luke almost fed Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, and Tyson to on board Princess Andromeda. The drakon makes another appearance in the Battle of Labyrinth book along the borders of Camp Half-Blood and is described as a 30-foot-long serpent with rows of razor teeth, bright green scales, and scary eyes. Echidna. It's time to meet the mother of all monsters, the deadly Echidna. In Greek mythology, she's considered to be the daughter of Gaia and Tartarus, and with her husband Typhon, she spawned all the major and some of the minor monsters that are part of Greek mythology. In their war against the Olympians, they were defeated, and Typhon was imprisoned under Mount Etna, while Echidna was granted freedom to test future generations of heroes and demigods. Echidna made her appearance in the first book of the Percy Jackson series, The Lightning Thief, in which she was sent by Zeus to test Percy Jackson on top of the arch. Echidna is portrayed in the novel as a plus-sized woman in a denim dress with a scary chihuahua, who's her kid, the Chimera, by the Mist. The only indications that she was a monster were her reptilian tongue, the fact that she named her dog Sunny, which Percy initially mistook for the name of the dog, and her snake-like slitted eyes. When she takes on her actual form, she retains her human head but has a snake-like body. Her tongue is forked, and instead of teeth, she has fangs. Her skin and eyes are likewise similar to those of a reptile, with sideways slits and brilliant green scaly skin. Eidolons. Hoo-hoo! We have spirits in the house now. Eidolons are spirits that are capable of possessing others and appear in the third Heroes of Olympus book, The Mark of Athena. The Eidolons possess Jason Grace, Leo Valdez, and Percy Jackson. The Eidolons' appearance is unclear because they possess other individuals and items. They all have the same golden eyes when they take control of someone, and when they talk when possessing someone, they have a hollow voice and speak haltingly, as if English were a second language, as detailed in The Mark of Athena. Percy, on the other hand, recognized an Eidolon as a dark wisp of smoke while locating the Tartarus side of the Doors of Death. Eidolons have the ability to control other individuals or machines. When a person's possessed, the possessed person can see what's going on but is powerless to stop it. They learn everything a person knows while inhabiting them, including things like swordplay and how a person thinks. Possessing someone doesn't harm them unless the Eidolon causes them to damage themselves. Eidolons appear to be able to conceal their presence from individuals they possess, which means that those being possessed will be unlikely to distinguish which actions were their own and which were caused by the Eidolons. Empusa. Next up on the list is Greek mythology's version of a vampire. Empusae are monsters that suck blood and have wings that serve Hecate, the goddess of mist and magic. Empusae are made by fusing magic, animals, bronze, and ghosts. Hecate sends them to guard routes and consume travelers. According to other accounts, the Empusae fled and hid, letting out a high-pitched scream in response to insults. The Empusae are well remembered for frightening Dionysus and Xanthias with their approach to the underworld in Aristophanes' The Frogs. They began when Pandora opened the Pythos that was handed to her. The first Empusae was released when she opened it. Empusae are stunningly attractive and enticing women. An Empusae's real form, on the other hand, is a woman with fiery hair, white skin, bright red eyes, fangs, one prosthetic celestial bronze leg, and one donkey leg, and wings. This form is employed to drink the blood of the males they enthrall. These monsters have the ability to manipulate the mist, hypnotize men, escape using flames, and charm others. The Empusi show up in a few of the books in both the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series. Erymanthian boar, a gift from Pan, the satyr god of nature. Percy Jackson, Thalia Grace, Zoe Nightshade, Grover Underwood, and Bianca D'Angelo meet and ride the Erymanthian boar for the first time. Grover believes Pan delivered it as a present when they were in the town of Cloudcraft, New Mexico. After Percy forces it to tumble off a cliff into a heap of snow, Grover's the first to notice it and suggests it to the team as a mode of transportation. The Erymanthian boar leads them to the junkyard of the guards, where they lose Bianca to a Talos prototype. The boar is depicted as being 30 feet tall with canoe-sized tusks and moving at breakneck speed. In Greek mythology, Eurystheus assigned the fourth of Hercules' 12 labors to catch the Erymanthian boar. Hercules controlled the beast by pushing it into a snowbank and chaining it. The Erymanthian boar was a large, fear-inspiring beast of the wild that dwelt on Erymanthos in the primeval highlands of Arcadia, where archaic rituals survived. Feather-shooting bird. The feather-shooting birds are monsters that can shoot their feathers like they're throwing knives. They show up in the story, The Stolen Chariot. The birds protect Ares' temple, which is now the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. After Phobos and his brother Deimos steal Ares' war chariot from the demigod daughter of Ares, Phobos calls them to fight Clarisse LaRue. Clarisse confronts them near Good High School, where Percy Jackson is a student and he realizes she's fighting a hopeless struggle. He skips class to aid her, claiming to be sick, and the two of them successfully repel the birds. They're metal with dark feathers and are roughly as big as ravens. Flesh-eating horses. Horses were always herbivores in my mind, but Greek mythology brought a twist to the horses by making them eat flesh. In the fourth book of the Percy Jackson series, The Battle of the Labyrinth, while visiting the Triple G Ranch, Percy Jackson offers to clean the stables of the flesh-eating horses in order to save Annabeth Chase, Grover Underwood, Tyson, and Nico D'Angelo. The stables are overflowing with horse dung. Hercules had cleansed them once before using a river. Geryon claims that the horses enjoy unclean stables. Percy strikes a bargain with Geryon in which he pledges to let him and his pals walk free if the stables are cleaned by sunset. The horses try to approach him while he's doing this. They appear to be the only horses who don't regard Percy as a son of Poseidon, the god of horses. Instead, they call him seafood and mock him. Percy now sprays them with salt water extracted from fossilized shells and the filth is dissolved into the ground. The horses pledge not to eat any more people after Percy's cleaned the stables. Percy responds by threatening to return with more seashells and giving them another wash. They agree and swear to be good, flesh-eating horses. The Furies. It's time for vengeance. The Furies were spirits of vengeance that were under the service of Hades, the god of the underworld. Each Fury was occasionally depicted in Greek mythology as avenging a certain form of offense, such as assault, grudges, or murder. Ironically, in order to avoid them, they're frequently known as the kindly ones. The Furies consisted of Alecto, Megara, and Tisiphone, who all originated from Uranus' Ica, which Kronos had released throughout the earth when killing his father. Following Kronos' defeat in the Titanomachy, his three mighty sons divided the earth among each other, with the oldest, Hades, getting the underworld and hiring the Furies to assist him in enforcing his authority and justice among the myriad souls of the dead that joined his hellish realm. They were the ones in charge of supervising the fields of punishment, and Hades would occasionally dispatch them to bring living sinners to justice as well, tormenting them into madness unless they made atonement for their horrible offenses. The Furies, as depicted in The Lightning Thief, have leathery bat-like wings, claws, mouths full of large yellow fangs, and luminous eyes. They wield whips that dance with flames whenever they flick them. They carried handbags while dressed as human women in crumpled velvet skirts and shapeless knit caps of various colors. Furies are as strong as Hades' lieutenants. They can transform into human forms at will, regardless of gender. They also have superhuman strength and speed. They can fly due to their wings, and they wield tremendous whips that produce excruciating pain on impact and may be pyrokinetic. The full extent of their powers is unknown, but given that Hades entrusted them with hunting down Thalia at Half-Blood Hill, as well as generally pinning down and relentlessly tormenting sinners until they either repented or regretted their mistakes, they must have other, unseen powers that are powerful in their own way. Gagines. The Gagines, or Earthborn as they're more commonly known, are giant monsters that are created out of the earth. According to myths, when Jason and the Argonauts arrive on a small island near Bear Mountain, they're attacked by the Gagines, who ransack their ship while the others explored the forest to obtain supplies. Hercules was among the Argonauts protecting the ship at that point, and managed to kill a few of them before Jason returned. The Argonauts sailed off after killing a few of the remaining Gagines. These giants are dressed in canvas loincloths and resemble clay figurines of six-armed giants. They stand 7 to 8 feet tall, have extraordinary strength and can produce big, unexpectedly sharp stones in their hands. These Earthborn make appearances in the Heroes of Olympus series as the servants of the giants. They were often foot soldiers of Gaia and her children, the Gigantes. Geryon. It's time to meet Geryon, who, according to Greek mythology, is the grandson of Medusa and the son of Chrysaor and Calidor. He was a terrifying giant that lived on the mythical Hesperides island, Erythea, in the westernmost part of the Mediterranean. Geryon was often referred to as a monster with human faces. Geryon had 1 head, 3 bodies and 2 arms in total. According to some legends, he also had 6 legs, while others claimed that the 3 bodies were linked to 1 pair of legs. He's portrayed as having a regular head in the novel. Decades of exposure to sunlight had aged and browned his face. He had a pencil-thin moustache and glossy black hair. He wore a huge pair of Levi's and had 2 pretty muscular legs. His chests were each dressed in a different color shirt, green, yellow, and red. Geryon's a vicious monster who only cares about money. To achieve that goal, he'll betray everybody he meets while he can find someone with a greater offer, and he has a tendency to break laws written by the gods themselves. He'll also violate every promise he makes if he's not forced to accept the terms. Geryon's also a slacker who will make Eurytion complete all of the labor rather than doing it himself. When driven into battle, he relies on his capacity to regenerate, as long as all 3 of his hearts are functioning properly. This causes him to be overconfident in his abilities, which leads to his death by Percy. Procrustes. In ancient times, Procrustes was believed to be Poseidon's son, who had his headquarters on Mount Corydolos on the sacred route connecting Athens and Eleusis. He had an iron bed in which he welcomed everyone who passed by to stay for the night, and he slaughtered them by stretching them if their heights were too small and cutting off any extras if they were overly tall. Procrustes went on his administration of horrors until he was apprehended by Theseus on his way to Athens via the sacred route by fitting him onto his own bed. Procrustes was resurrected and now owns Krusty's Waterbed Palace, a mattress shop in Los Angeles, under the alias Krusty. While looking for the portal to the underworld, Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase and Grover Underwood meet Procrustes. He appears to be friendly despite his intimidating appearance, and he suggests they seek refuge in his shop from the gang members who are chasing them. The monster salesperson dupes both Annabeth and Grover into lying on mattresses, trapping them, but Percy escapes and persuades Procrustes to lie down too. Once the snares are set, Percy frees his friends and uses Riptide to cut Procrustes to death. Cercopes. The Cercopes were the offspring of Oceanus and Thea in Greek mythology. Their clairvoyant mother warned them as children to stay wary of a black-bottomed man. They ended up becoming criminals until Hercules found them stealing from him. He hung them from a pole and dragged them after him. They were unable to ignore his bottom, which had gone black from sunlight and grime. He was the black-bottomed man their mother had cautioned them about. He finally permitted them to leave because they told such amusing jokes. They were then transformed into monkeys by Zeus. In the 4th book, The House of Hades, the Cercopes have established themselves in Bologna, Italy. When Argo II arrives, they attack and loot it, stealing items such as the Archimedes Sphere and Piper McLean's knife, Catoptris. Leo Valdez and Jason Grace pursued them, determined to retrieve their belongings. They rendered Jason unconscious by entangling him in a net at the Fountain of Neptune. Leo tracks them down and beats them with a homemade flashbang grenade. He then returned their belongings and promised not to murder Passalos and Acmon on the condition that they travel to New York City and delay the Romans in order to slow down their attack on Camp Half-Blood. Talos. It's time to meet one of the creations of Hephaestus, the god of forges. Talos was an automaton that defended Europa in Crete by circling the island's coastlines 3 times a day, guarding them and flinging boulders at any unknown incoming ships. As the original Jason and the Argonauts arrived on the island of Crete to replenish their provisions after winning the Golden Fleece, Talos, the island's protector, held the Argo away by flinging large stones at it. Medea, the sorceress, allegedly drugged him or duped him into thinking she could make him eternal by removing a nail and then murdering him with the exact same nail. Other accounts claim that the sorceress used her magic to distract him so that Jason and his warriors could dig out the nail until all of the ichor flowed. In the 3rd Percy Jackson book, The Titan's Curse, Percy Jackson and a group of demigods encounter a prototype of Talos in the junkyard of the gods. Aphrodite states that Hephaestus was very protective of his stuff. Therefore, the prototype was activated when Bianca D'Angelo stole a mythomagic figurine of Hades as a gift for her little brother Nico. The daughter of Hades sacrificed herself to protect the rest of the members of the quest. Hyperborean Giant. The Hyperboreans, which means beyond the Boreas, are northern giants. As claimed by Thalia Grace and as witnessed in the events of the Son of Neptune, they're normally harmless, but they appear as foes in The Last Olympian. Hyperborean giants are described as snow giants who, due to their incredible gullibility, just serve Kronos. They participated in the Battle of Manhattan. They're definitely a threat in a fight because they can turn any foe they beat into a solid piece of ice. A Hyperborean giant bleeds blue blood when wounded and will become trapped in a block of ice if defeated. Hyperborean giants stand 30 feet tall, with blue skin and icy grey hair. Laestrygonian giant. In his travels, Odysseus came across these monsters. The Laestrygonians consumed many of his troops and threw boulders from high cliffs, destroying 11 of his 12 ships. Odysseus' ship is the only one that survives, as it had been hidden in a cove near the coast. They're described in the Odyssey as standing more than 8 feet tall, with crazy eyes and pointed teeth. The Laestrygonian giants make multiple appearances throughout the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series. They first appeared in the Sea of Monsters book after being recruited by Percy's new bully, Matt Sloan. Laestrygonian giants dubbed Marrow Sucker, Skull Eater, and Joe Bob infiltrate Percy's school disguised as tourists from Detroit and join a dodgeball game. They morphed and attacked with flaming dodgeballs during the game. They were all defeated by the united efforts of Tyson, Annabeth Chase, and Percy Jackson. Percy's surprised by how lengthy the species name is and retorts, "Laestry what? What does that mean in English?" Then Annabeth says, "Canadians." Giant Badger. Making an appearance in the 5th Percy Jackson book, The Last Olympian, the giant badger is mentioned in a report by Coach Gleason Hedge, who prominently appears in the Heroes of Olympus series, to Grover Underwood. In the report, it specified that Coach Hedge was unsuccessful in repelling the giant badger's attack and was forced to retreat back to Ottawa due to the beast destroying several dryads and other nature spirits. The satyrs and dryads tried to call on the power of Pan as instructed by Grover, but they didn't succeed, which resulted in their retreat to safety. Giant Crab. It's time to meet Mr. Krabby. The giant crab, or Karkinos, that Percy Jackson fought in the 5th book of the Percy Jackson series, The Last Olympian, was on his mission to blow up Luke Castellan's ship, the Princess Andromeda, along with Charles Beckendorf. During the fight, Percy killed Karkinos by getting the ground wet with water and then slithering under him to strike the crab in its weak area, its stomach, with a riptide. He was able to do this by recalling what Paul Blowfish had shared with him on their crabbing trip. Karkinos collapsed, leaving just an empty shell as a spoil of war. In Greek mythology, Karkinos came to the Hydras' rescue after Hera sent him, just as Hercules had thought to have Iolaus burn their heads so they wouldn't regrow. Hercules rescued his nephew by hurling himself at the crab with a flying kick between its eyes, killing it instantaneously as its shell cracked and his brain was smashed. Hercules and Iolaus defeated the Hydra after getting rid of the crab. Karkinos was then honored as the constellation Cancer. Giant Eagle. Giant eagles are enormous, strong birds of prey with a massive head and beak. They appear frequently in the Heroes of Olympus and were primarily used by the Romans to transport and defend Roman demigods. Eagles are big, strong, and capable of carrying demigods in their talons. They're solidly built. They're golden colored, with a huge beak and head. Eagles pursue demigods similar to monsters, but at greater speeds. According to mythology, when Prometheus defied Zeus by giving flame to all mortals, he received his punishment by being bound to a rock and having his liver devoured by the giant eagle, the Caucasian eagle, only to regenerate and be devoured again the following day. Giant Scorpion. In Greek mythology, in retaliation for Orion's excessive hunting, the goddess of the earth, Gaia, awoke from her slumber and dispatched a massive scorpion to poison him. When Artemis saw Orion's dead body, she honored him in the skies, with the scorpion forming the constellation Scorpio. In the 4th Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth, Daedalus purchases the huge scorpions from the Triple G Ranch using the identity of Quintus, the sword instructor at Camp Half-Blood. He housed them in their crates at Camp Half-Blood's sword-fighting arena. He eventually let them out during Capture the Flag in the Camp Half-Blood forest. Giant Snake. In the 4th Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth, Tyson and Grover suffered attacks by the giant snake as they traveled through the labyrinth in search of Pan. It possesses huge strength proportionate to its size, even surpassing Tyson's immense power, owing to its Cyclops status, but it was wiped out when an earthquake broke free large stones in the labyrinth and buried the monster. Percy Jackson saw the entire thing in one of his visions. We failed to know the snake species because Percy was unable to recognize it in his vision and dubbed it the giant snake. Gigantes. The Gigantes are Gaia and Tartarus' children. They're the Titans' younger siblings and serve their mother Gaia, who's one of the series' most powerful characters. In The Lost Hero, Enceladus stated that each Olympian had at least one Gygus as their bane. According to mythology, it wasn't until the gods defeated Kronos in the First Olympian War and claimed the throne that the Gigantes were born. While it was Gaia's plan for the gods to fight against her own kids, the Titans, she became dissatisfied with how the gods ruled and thus had a new set of offspring with the primordial deity of the pit, Tartarus, which was the Gigantes. Each Gigante was created and bred, particularly for fighting one of the Olympian gods and usurping that god's realm. Zeus summoned his own sons, Hercules and Dionysus, to aid in winning the battle, known as the Gigantomachy, because it had been foretold that only a god and a demigod cooperating could triumph over this threat to Olympus. The Gigantes are enormous, strong humanoids with long hair and dragon-like legs, clothed in Greek armor. The Gigantes have a variety of characteristics. For example, Porphyrion, the Gigantes' leader, is proud and wants respect from all of his siblings. His brothers, Otis and Ephialtes, are constantly seeking attention and putting on extravagant acts to get it. Damason, unlike Ares and Mars, is an advocate for peace and a healer who lives as a farmer rather than warring against the gods.
I hope you find my eye.
Medusa. Let's meet one of the most famous monsters from Greek mythology, Medusa. Portrayed as the daughter of Phorcys and Keto's daughter and a former Athena priestess, Medusa, despite her sister's warnings about sea gods, felt thrilled that Poseidon favored her. He escorted her to the local shrine dedicated to Athena. Infuriated and appalled by the two's love behavior at the base of her statue, Athena punished Medusa, much to the surprise and dismay of Poseidon. The woman's hair was transformed into serpents, and anyone who looked into her eyes turned to stone. She eventually wound up residing in a cave away from human civilization with only her siblings, Cthino and Euryale, and the three became known as the Gorgons. She was killed by Perseus on his quest, and he used her head, which still held the power of petrification, to defeat a monstrous sea creature. In the first Percy Jackson book, The Lightning Thief, Medusa, disguised as an elderly Middle Eastern lady called Auntie M, draws visitors to enter her emporium and then changes them into statues by forcing them to look at her face, generally straight into her eyes. She wears a veil to conceal her face and snake hair. She offers to take a photograph of her victims and then lifts the veil to reveal her face, turning them to stone. Medusa transformed numerous peoples and creatures into sculptures, including Grover's uncle. She's eventually killed by Percy Jackson, with the help of Annabeth Chase and Grover Underwood, when they stumble across her emporium. It's believed that Percy was the last one to slay her, as mentioned in the Heroes of Olympus series. Euryale. The sister of Medusa and one of the Gorgon's sisters, Euryale was revived by the earth goddess Gaia in the Heroes of Olympus series. Euryale and her sister Cthino had been slain multiple times by Percy, yet they merely continued reforming, since Thanatos had no way to stop monsters from rising from the dead. She was resolved to exact vengeance on Percy for slaying Medusa, who hadn't come back yet. She chastised her sister for teaching Percy about the secret of Gorgon's blood and for getting overly involved with the task. Euryale and her sister fought the 12th Legion Fulminata at the Battle of Camp Jupiter. They were both killed at the end of the conflict, probably by Mrs. O'Leary, Percy's pet hellhound. Euryale was significantly more cynical than Cthino and crueler. She seemed to be the dominant sister, since Cthino appeared uneasy when she began to yell at her for disregarding her ideas, and she was usually ordering her around. Euryale was sharper than Cthino, but not as smart as Medusa. Cthino. The last of the Gorgon sisters, Percy first noticed Cthino working as a greeter at a bargain mart store. Percy assumed her name was Bino, until he decoded a large green button that said, "Welcome, my name is Cthino." Percy describes her as having the appearance of a dumpy elderly grandma, but her hair turns out to be vipers. She possesses bat wings on her back and tusks protruding from the corners of her mouth. She's claimed to constantly carry a large silver dish with free samples of crispy cheese and wieners. Percy had already slain her, but she and her sister Euryale continued to reform as Thanatos was shackled. She also unintentionally informs Percy that blood drawn from the left side of her body is deadly, while blood drawn from the right has healing properties. To run past them, Percy snowboards down the hill with the free sample plate. Cthino has a somewhat carefree nature and a somewhat naive disposition, as evidenced by the fact that she believes her reflection is Medusa. Grey Sisters. Anger, Tempest, and Wasp are collectively referred to as the Grey Sisters. They are three elderly women who share just one eye and only one tooth. They run a taxi firm that services the greater New York City region and its residents. But in ancient times, the Grey Sisters are the children of Keto and Phorcys, two minor sea gods. The Grey Sisters have met the original Greek hero Perseus. Perseus visits the Grey Sisters at one point during his voyage in order to locate Medusa. When he arrived, the sisters were completely shocked when he asked for the information. Finally, he became so irritated with them that he hit the sister with her eyeball and wrenched out her tooth. They pleaded for the tooth and eye back, but Perseus stayed firm. Mourning, they revealed the location of Medusa and the three items he needed to slay her: Athena's shield, Hermes' winged sandals, and Hades' helm. In the second Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters, Annabeth Chase hails the Grey Sisters' assistance when Percy, Tyson, and she flee from law enforcement after Percy is held accountable for torching the school gym at Merriweather College Prep. Following an attack on the Laestrygonian giants, Annabeth led Percy and Tyson to the road and tossed a golden drachma into the road, which went through, yelling, "Stethi, O Harma, Diobeles." That meant, "Stop, chariot of damnation," summoning the chariot of damnation. A couple of seconds later, A smoke-filled cab emerged on the ground, and the trio hopped in. The taxi drivers identify themselves as the Grey Sisters. They argue over who should get the tooth in the eye and claim to be wise, saying that they know the location that Percy seeks. Confused, Percy takes the eyeball hostage to get the information from them. They reluctantly give out the information, a set of numbers that Percy later realizes are latitudes and longitudes. Cryosaur, the forgotten brother of the famous Pegasus. Cryosaur popped out along with his brother when Medusa was decapitated by Perseus. In the Mark of Athena, Cryosaur and his crew of dolphin monsters take over Argo 2 and defeat Percy in a duel. But he's tricked by Percy and the rest of the crew and flees from the ship when he realizes that he's outnumbered. Cryosaur sports a golden Gorgon mask over his face, complete with curled tusks, horrifying features, and wavy golden snake hair. He's outfitted in full Greek combat armor and wields the first Greek sword fashioned of imperial gold, which he stubbornly refers to as enchanted gold. His facial features are unclear, yet one can conclude he has something to hide. Once his mask is taken off, he quickly conceals his face. His voice is characterized as rich and velvety with an exotic Middle Eastern accent, similar to that of his mother, Medusa, in The Lightning Thief. Dolphin Warriors. Dionysus transformed humans into dolphin-human hybrids, creating dolphin warriors. They eventually followed Cryosaur and were his loyal pirate crew. In ancient times, Dionysus was just starting out as a god when he traveled the countryside and taught humans how to create wine. On his way back to Thebes, he was apprehended by pirates who thought he was royalty and would demand a large ransom. Dionysus allowed sailors to kidnap him and carry him aboard. When the captain instructed them to set sail, the ship wouldn't move. The captain then spotted vines binding the ship intact and sprouting throughout the ship. Dionysus suddenly transformed into a lion, and the crew abandoned the ship by leaping overboard. Those who jumped, however, transformed into dolphins on their descent. Cryosaur, along with his dolphin warriors, seized the Argo 2 when it was cruising in the Mediterranean Sea, seizing control in minutes. They tie up the majority of the crew members and set them down on the deck. The dolphin warriors only get scared when Percy mentions Dionysus as their captain. The wine god is the only thing they truly dread. Percy says that as a penalty for failing to make it to Rome, Dionysus would either make them insane or completely transform them into dolphins. He then gestures to Frank Zang, who's hidden and has the ability to shapeshift into a dolphin. Ignoring the captain's protests, the dolphin warriors retreat in terror. Griffin. Griffins are flying monsters that appear in the Heroes of Olympus series and inhabit the north. They pick up gold for their nests and sometimes lay golden eggs. Griffins have a lion-like physique with an eagle's face and feet on their front legs, but some possess paws, beady red eyes, and a lengthy pointed beak. They also have enormous wings on their backs, which allow them to fly. They're frequently painted black. Percy Jackson expected them to resemble noble animals, like lions with wings, but after seeing one, he realized they look more like flying hyenas. According to Apollo, they've evolved over time, growing smaller and scrappier in order to live. Percy Jackson, along with Hazel Levesque and Frank Zang, encounter them on their quest to Alaska to free Thanatos, the Greek god of death. Harpies. In the myths, Harpies are the daughters of Thauma, a minor sea god, and Electra, an oceanid. They're sisters of Iris, the Greek goddess of rainbows. A Harpy was regarded as the mother of Zephyros, the west wind. Zeus once sent Harpies to attack King Phineus of Thrace as a punishment for exposing the god's secrets through prophecies. When food was served to him on a plate in front of him, the creatures would dive down and steal it away, spoiling any leftover pieces. When the Argonauts arrived, Calais and Zethys, the Boreads with wings, followed the storm spirits to the Strophades Islands, where Iris, their sister, warned the Boreads to turn back and leave the Harpies alone. There are 3 winged spirits of sharp wind or cleaning Harpies, as they're called in Camp Half-Blood: Aello, Seleno, and Ocypete. These Harpies are here to consume demigods who wander out of their cabins after curfew. They usually speak in the third person, as in campers out of bed, dinner for hungry Harpies. Percy Jackson describes the cleaning Harpies as though they'd crossbred with the dodo birds. They clean the plates with lava, which he claims will eradicate 99.9% of all germs. A prominent Harpy in the series is Ella, a little Harpy with red feathers and a thin body. Her eidetic memory allows her to remember practically anything she reads. She read parts of Rome's hallowed Sibylline books before they burned down and can recall the books' projections for the future, making her an extremely significant person, particularly to the Romans. The first comprehensive prophecy she delivered in the series is related to the third book, The Mark of Athena. She's now in a romance with Tyson, the Cyclopes. Hippocampi. The Hippocampi, or the 100-handed ones, as they're commonly known, are a race of humanoid creatures, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. They were one of Gaia and Uranus's 3 sets of children, the other 2 being the Titans and the elder Cyclopes. Briareus is the last Hippocampi left by the Second Olympian War, as his 2 brothers have faded over time. Kronos, after conquering his father Uranos, became king of Mount Orthis, and fulfilled his promise to free the elder Cyclopes and Hippocampi from Tartarus. Cottus and his Hippocampi brothers, Briareus and Gyges, constructed a magnificent black marble house for Kronos on Mount Orthis. Prior to the First Olympian War, Kronos imprisoned the Hippocampi again in Tartarus with their brothers, the elder Cyclopes. Campe guarded and tortured them until Zeus slew her, and Poseidon set the boys free by breaking their bindings with his trident. The Hippocampi assisted the Olympians' victory in the First Olympian War. Cottus and Gyges later worked as guards at Tartarus Gate. Briareus. Let's meet the only one of the Hippocampi that didn't fade due to people forgetting their story. Briareus' history is the same as that of his brothers, but he didn't fade like them and was imprisoned in a prison on Alcatraz Island, guarded by Campe. Percy and his quest members stumble across him as they traverse the labyrinth in the 4th Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and Tyson rescues the older being from the prison. But Briareus doesn't have the will to go on, even though Tyson tries to motivate him. But Tyson's words had an effect on the monster, as he showed up in the final battle at Camp Half-Blood along with Daedalus to redeem himself, and defeat Campe in battle by burying her underneath a pile of rocks. Briareus has 100 arms that extend from his chest and 50 faces. As described by Percy, he appears like a fork full of spaghetti, or wearing a bunch of giant octopi in The Last Olympian. His arms resemble those of humans, but his massive feet have 8 toes on each. He also changes his look to reflect his emotions, with the exception of his eyes, which are pure brown with no whites. Hellhound. These are not your regular cute puppies. These ferocious canine monsters reside in the underworld, the realm of Hades, and often do his bidding, which usually means some helpless demigod is going to be tormented or hunted down. The Hellhound has the ability to travel through the shadows, a power that most creatures of the underworld, Hades, and his spawn have the ability to do so. Nico D'Angelo is in possession of the power in the series. Mrs. O'Leary is the only Hellhound that has appeared in the book series that's friendly in nature. She becomes Percy Jackson's pet after her previous owner, Daedalus, passes away. Hellhounds are often portrayed as enormous black mastiffs with burning red eyes. They're usually around the size of a grizzly bear or a rhino, but they can grow to be as tall and massive as a garbage truck, like in the case of Mrs. O'Leary. Hippolectrion, endangered species of horse monsters that appear in the 4th Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth. The Hippolectrion have a horse-like front and a rooster-like back. Their back feet feature enormous yellow claws. Their tails are feathered and their wings appear red. Some Hippolectrions are located at the Triple G Ranch. They produce eggs once every year. Geryon makes omelets with their eggs once they've been laid. Geryon suggests that Hippolectrion omelets are better than normal omelets. Hippocampus, a hybrid monster of horse and fish. Hippocampus appears throughout the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series. They first make an appearance in the 2nd Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters, when they arrive to transport Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, and Tyson to the Princess Andromeda at Poseidon's behest. Tyson is saddened to see Rainbow, this giant hippocampus, leave as they get on the Princess Andromeda. Afterward, in the novel, Rainbow rescues Tyson from the CSS Birmingham explosion and transports him to the island of Polyphemus. The Queen Anne's Revenge sinking causes the members of the quest to be in danger when Tyson recommends calling Rainbow for assistance. Tyson and Percy manage to call Rainbow, who arrives with companions to rescue them. The Hippocampi transport them out of the Sea of Monsters and bring them near Miami, but they won't get too close owing to filthy water. Rainbow reappears again, transporting Tyson to the forges of the Cyclopes. Hippocampi are creatures with horse-like bodies from the waist up and silvery fish bodies from the waist down, complete with glittering scales and rainbow-colored tail fins. They draw Poseidon's chariot and generate sea foam as they move. Hydra, a 9-headed monstrous creature. Echidna and Typhon gave birth to the Linnaean Hydra. Although hardly the strongest of its brothers, the Hydra was a terrifying and violent creature born with 9 heads. The monster plagued the Lerna kingdom, driving everyone away with deadly fumes and acid along with slaughtering livestock. Whenever any of the monster's heads were severed, 2 other snake heads grew in its place. King Eurystheus assigned Hercules the second of his dozen labors to slaughter the Linnaean Hydra. The hero triumphed over the creature with his nephew Iolaus's help. He applied fire to each stump after Hercules had cut it before pulling off the head that was immortal with just his hands and smashing it beneath a massive boulder. After slaying the beast, Hercules used the bile of the Hydra to dip the ends of his arrows, making them more toxic. However, Eurystheus claimed that labor couldn't be accepted because he had help. Therefore, Hercules was tasked to perform an additional labor to compensate. In the Sea of Monsters, the Hydra is portrayed as a massive scaly lizard-like monster with 9 diamond-shaped heads and a mouth lined with razor-sharp teeth. Each mouth expels poisonous acid. Whenever a single of its heads is cut, it quickly ceases bleeding and expands like a balloon. The Hydra regenerates 2 heads in place of the missing one by breaking the chopped neck in 2 and transforming them into additional heads. In the Sea of Monsters, the Hydra is shown sporting a plastic bib that says, "I'm a monster donut, kid." Ichthys Centaur, 1/3 fish, 1/3 horse, and 1/3 human. The Ichthys Centaur are residents of the sea and related to the Centaurs who live on land. They're commonly called fish centaurs, as they're the half-brothers of centaurs. They're human from the waist up, but their skin is blue and green, and their heads feature lobster claws that function as horns. They feature horse-like forelegs, but the back legs actually resemble fishtails with V-shaped tail fins. Leo refers to Bythos as the lemur bean man. Campe, the first foe to be slain by the master bolt of Zeus. Campe is Cronus' most powerful and terrible ally. She was formerly Tartarus' jailer until Zeus appeared and destroyed her, freeing the Cyclopes and Hippocampi. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, Cronus recruits her once more to attack Camp Half-Blood. However, she's eventually killed in battle. Percy Jackson and his pals encounter her in the Labyrinth. She restricts Briars, a Hecatonchiri, or hundred-handed one, from fleeing Alcatraz. Campe pursues Briar when he escapes from Alcatraz with Tyson's help. Later, Percy meets her in a dream, where she asks Luke Castellan for a larger part in the struggle against the Olympians. And as she leaves, he remarks that they shouldn't have liberated her because she's excessively strong and chaotic. During the Battle of the Labyrinth, Campe proves to be one of the Titans' most deadly opponents. Percy and Annabeth chase, fight her, but are nearly killed until Briar joins the fight. Briar buries Campe by striking her with rocks. Carpoi, the children of Gaia and Tartarus. Carpoi are monstrous grain spirits that appear in the second Heroes of Olympus book, The Son of Neptune. They're toddler-sized with rolls of baby fat, yet their skin is greenish due to the chlorophyll in their veins. They have dry, brittle wings that resemble corn husks and tufts of white hair that look like corn silk. Their faces are worn and covered in corn kernels. Their eyes are solid green, and they have canine fangs for teeth. They can also disperse into whirlwinds of their preferred grain. They turn into cereals like Weetabix and Milo. All the Carpoi are named after fruits of various types of grains. Cartobleps, cow-like monsters whose name meant down-looker. Cartobleps had a buffalo-sized torso and pachyderm-like squat legs. A Cartobleps's head looked like a warthog's head, and it perched atop an extended neck that appeared unsuitable for practical support. Perhaps the most horrifying aspect of these creatures was their enormous and lethal bloodshot eyes. Cartobleps had an aroma that reeked of death and famine, akin to the swamp gas that permeated their preferred environment. The fragrance was evocative of skunk stink combined with unpleasant bog vapors. The Cartoblepones were accidentally brought to Venice, Italy, from Africa. They eat poisonous roots found along canals and have a toxic stare and breath. Frank Zhang killed every one of them in Venice, giving him the ability to transform his opponent into a snake. He utilized the power to transform the final Cartoblep into a serpent. Kyries. The Kyries, also called daemons, are filthy spirits that feed on violent deaths and are the spirits of famine and sickness found on battlefields. The Kyries are the daughters of the protogynous Nyx. In legend, they were frequently seen wandering battlefields. Later on, they were viewed as vengeful ghosts of the dead. They live in the underworld and help the Titans in the Battle of Manhattan, but don't physically invade Olympus during the Second Olympian War. Percy Jackson, Thalia Grace, and Nico D'Angelo are assaulted by a gang of Kyries in the underworld. During the battle, one of them poisons Percy by scratching his exposed shoulder. Thalia and Nico apply nectar to the wound, but Nico informs Percy that the Kyries are spirits of sickness, pestilence, and violence, and that, as a result, the wound will become infected, necessitating significant healing from a god or Percy will die. Percy becomes increasingly unwell and weaker throughout their journey, despite the continuous application of honey to the wound. After Percy wipes Iapetus's memories with the river Lethe, the Titan heals his wounds with a single touch, saving Percy's life. Ladon, the dragon with the 100 heads. Ladon was the guardian appointed by Hera, the goddess of family, to guard the garden of Hesperides, where the golden apples of immortality could be found. Ladon met the demigod Hercules, who was on his second final labor of the 12, and he needed to retrieve a golden apple from the garden. However, Hercules was unable to beat Ladon. As a result, the demigod proceeded to tighten Atlas to retrieve the apples, in exchange for holding the sky, using his shoulders till his return. Atlas easily consented, and went past the dragon to retrieve the apples, but once he came back, the Titan saw an opportunity to avoid his punishment. Atlas promised to transport the fruits directly directly to King Eurystheus. Hercules, on the other hand, noticed the ruse and feigned to agree before asking Atlas to hold the sky for a little minute as he used the Nemean lion's pelt to pad his shoulders. This sounded fair to the Titan, who reclaimed the sky, but Hercules just snatched the apples from him as he fled, leaving Atlas enraged and infuriated to face his punishment once more. Lamia, the queen of Libya and the demigod daughter of Hecate. Lamia, or Marin Lamia, was cursed to be a monster as revenge by Hera, as she accepted the courtship of Zeus, whose attention she snagged. The envious Hera decided to kill Lamia's children to show her wrath, and even transformed her into a monster. Lamia was angry at the goddess and decided to cause trouble. A skilled magic user, she used an incantation that would enable every monster across the world to sense a half-blood's taint. Now we know who to blame for our favorite demigods being targeted and hunted down. In the story The Son of Magic, Lamia is brought back to life by Gaia in order to hunt down Alabaster Sea Torrington, the demigod son of Hecate who sided with Kronos. Due to the doors of death being opened by Gaia and Alcyonius keeping Thanatos, the Greek god of death, captive, Alabaster was unsuccessful in killing her, despite his numerous attempts. She would turn back to black dust and be revived within moments. The monster just wouldn't stay dead. After Howard Claymore's speech about his new book, whose sponsor is Lamia, she witnesses Claymore and Alabaster talking and chases Claymore, only to realize later that he's Alabaster's ally. She curses Claymore after their short confrontation, shattering the shielding magic Alabaster used to shelter himself from Lamia. However, with Claymore's assistance, Alabaster finds an incantation that connects Lamia to the earth. However, their mother, Hecate, steps in and saves both of her children. Lamia will not assault Alabaster again, Hecate says, knowing he can use that spell on her. Her fate remains unclear. In The Son of Magic, she has glowing green-colored eyes with snake-like slits. As she extends her hand, her fingers shrivel and harden, and her nails form lizard-like claws. She's also got crocodile teeth. Lydian Drakon. The oldest and deadliest of Drakons, the Lydian Drakon refers to a large serpent killed by Hercules. In the myth, the Drakon ravaged the region of Lydia. It's described as having no legs and crawling like a snake, although it's extremely quick and has a paralyzing glare that can freeze opponents in fright. Percy describes it as a, "Oh my god, this thing is going to eat me" stare, rather than Medusa's terrifying gaze. It's more than 200 feet long and can emit acidic venom that corrodes armor. Its scales are highly robust and nearly indestructible, making the monster extremely difficult to defeat. The ideal place to assault a Drakon is through its soft, susceptible eyes. Percy describes it in The Last Olympian as having eyes like searchlights and is as thick as a school bus. Lycanthrope. These are not your typical werewolves. Lycanthropes, often known as werewolves, appear in numerous civilizations and may be slain only with silver. In both folklore and popular culture, there are numerous methods to become a werewolf. The most well-known of which is also used in the series is to be bitten by an already existing werewolf. In The Lost Hero, Hyper identified werewolves as black beasts larger than Great Danes. Their teeth glittered, and their brilliant crimson eyes appeared intelligent. The first lycanthrope was Lycaon, the king of Arcadia, who was invited by Zeus to dine with him. Lycaon wished to know the actual name of Zeus and get evidence that he was, in fact, Zeus. Lycaon attempted to give Zeus human flesh in order to establish his identity. Next, he sent assassins to assault Zeus while he was sleeping, testing the boundaries of his immortality. Zeus became so angry that he killed Lycaon's children with lightning bolts and condemned Lycaon to be the first lycanthrope. Manticore, a deadly monster that was killed by Dionysus in the book. The Manticore is a foe who gives Percy Jackson a run for his money. One of Atlas's henchmen in the book, a Manticore's face is human, but it possesses the body of a lion with a long tail like a scorpion, which is capable of shooting spikes. The Manticore additionally has two different colored eyes, one brown and the other being blue. These eyes kept two distinct colors, whether or not the Manticore is in his human or monster form. Initially, Percy finds Dr. Thorn, who is the Manticore that appears in the third book of the Percy Jackson series, The Titan's Curse, scary. He also acknowledges that standing before Atlas, Thorn appears to be a silly wannabe soldier, but Atlas is the genuine deal, who doesn't even need a uniform because he was a born commander. Minotaur, the first monster that Percy Jackson fought and slayed in the series. The Minotaur was a bull-like monster that was the son of Pasiphae and a white bull, the prized possession of King Minos, her husband. The bull was sent by Poseidon to be sacrificed to him by King Minos, but the greedy king didn't want to slaughter such a magnificent animal and decided to keep it for himself. The enraged Poseidon sought Aphrodite, the goddess of love's help, and cursed Pasiphae to fall in love with the bull. The result of the union was the monstrous half-man, half-bull called the Minotaur. I know it's weird, but that's Greek mythology for you. A lot of weird stuff. The Minotaur was held in the center of a labyrinth created by Daedalus until he was slain by Theseus, a demigod son of Poseidon who sailed from Athens to Crete to slay the beast. The Minotaur stood 7 feet tall, with muscular arms and legs and vein-webbed skin. He didn't wear anything but bright white fruit of the loom's pants. His top half was covered in coarse brown hair that began near his belly button and grew thicker as it neared his shoulders. His neck was a mass of muscle, with fur going up to his monstrous head, which included a snout as long as Percy Jackson's arm, snotty nostrils with a sparkling brass ring, wicked black eyes, and massive black and white horns with points that couldn't be sharpened with an electric sharpener. Mermeek. Mermeeks are huge ant-like critters the size of a full-grown German shepherd who enjoy shiny objects, such as gold. They live in vast anthills with complicated twisting pathways laden with plundered goods like gold, weapons, and jewelry. They spray poison, have nearly impenetrable back armor, deadly mandibles, can summon other members of the nest to help them, and are able to rapidly swarm even the most experienced warrior. This is certainly not something a demigod wants to face. People in ancient Greece thought they lived in the Indian deserts, where they loaded their anthills with gold. To explain the Indian people's riches, legend says that the bravest warrior slipped into the ant nest to retrieve the gold in a lethal game of grab and catch. Mermeeks are notorious for having tough skin and spitting acid, which tenderizes their prey. In Greek, Mermeeks means ants. In the Bronze Dragon story, the head of the Bronze Dragon is seen being dragged over the ground to the Mermeeks colony during a game of Capture the Flag between the campers of Camp Half-Blood. Charles Beckendorf claims that the dragon has been missing for years and attempts to reclaim the head from the gigantic ants, but is taken captive in the process. Selena Beauregard is outraged when she learns the truth and assists Annabeth Chase in repairing the recently discovered Bronze Dragon. Once restored, it races towards the Mermeeks' hive and wreaks havoc on the ants, letting Annabeth, Selena, and Percy Jackson save Beckendorf. Nemean Lion. It's time to meet one of the most famous monsters that originate from Greek mythology. The Nemean Lion is a monstrous beast that's almost always mentioned when the legend of Hercules is brought up. The mythical demigod son of Zeus defeated the beast as one of the 12 labors given to him by King Eurystheus. After hearing his account of the lion, the man was able to face it without using any weapons at first, instead strangling it to death. When Hercules attempted to slice its skin, his knife cracked, and eventually, Athena advised Hercules that he used the lion's claws to skin it. At the National Air and Space Museum, Luke Castellan and the general dispatched the lion to halt the party of hunters, demigods, and one satyr on their quest. It fought with Zoe Nightshade and Bianca D'Angelo, who launched arrows at it from above, but they shattered without harm on its pelt. Percy and Thalia were too terrified to come in close and fight with their sword and spear. Percy, on the other hand, had an idea and got a couple of packets of astronaut food from the gift store, which he hurled into the lion's jaws as he roared. Zoe used arrows to target the Nemean lion's mouth, which was the sole exposed area. The lion vanished, save for its pelt. Ophiuchus. Look who popped up. If it's not the Ophiuchus, or Bessie, as Percy Jackson nicknamed it. The Ophiuchus, or let's just stick to Bessie as his real name is a mouthful, is a monster from Greek mythology that granted someone the power to destroy the gods if he was slaughtered and his entrails sacrificed in a fire. His real name means serpent bull, and he's a half cow, half serpent creature. According to the old story, the beast came from Chaos alongside Gaia and Uranus. It was killed by a Titan ally during the first Titanomachy, but Zeus's eagle recovered its entrails before they were burned. The gods then preserved it in the heavens, in the Taurus Cetus constellation. Percy initially met him imprisoned in a net and nicknamed him Bessie, ignorant that he was a male. The Hippocampi and Percy were instrumental in freeing the monster. The Ophiuchus was key to the general's plot to take over the gods, which involved Thalia Grace summoning the beast, killing it, and offering its guts as a sacrifice. However, the Ophiuchus chased Percy, not Thalia. This was owing to Percy's rescue, and the creature's trust in Percy as its guardian. Grover subsequently brought it to Olympus, where he decided to let it survive after hearing a heartfelt testimonial from Percy, Poseidon, and Hephaestus. They built a sphere-shaped aquarium for it on Mount Olympus. Orthrus. Cerberus is not the only multi-headed dog-like monster in Greek mythology. There's also Orthrus, the two-headed guard dog of Triple G Ranches in the novel series. He's the brother of Cerberus and had revived beside Geryon in the fourth book, The Battle of Labyrinth. Despite the fact that Geryon is his official master, he prefers to listen to Eurytion since he cares for him. Percy Jackson, like Hercules in ancient mythology, arrives at the ranch and slays Geryon, but as opposed to Hercules, he leaves Orthus alive because he didn't protect his master, because Eurytion had commanded him to remain aside during the struggle between Percy and Geryon. Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, Grover Underwood, Tyson, and Nico D'Angelo leave the ranch shortly after this. Pegasi. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it Superman? No, these flying creatures are the Pegasi, the offspring of Pegasus, the original flying horse born from Medusa. They're found to appear in a range of colors, including white, black, brown, and blended colors. Pegasi are powerful, winged horses from Greece and the Roman Empire. They're bold, faithful creatures. Their wings are broad and feathered. Blackjack is the most prominent Pegasus seen in the series and is the nice and pure black Pegasus of Percy Jackson. He often serves as Percy's primary mode of transportation. Blackjack and other Pegasi frequently consult Percy, who assists them with their or other creatures' troubles. Peleus. Peleus is the dragon who guards and defends the golden fleece which is hung from Thalia's pine tree. He's possibly named after Achilles' father, King Peleus. It's unknown whether he's intelligent. He starts off as a newborn dragon. Peleus quickly grows big enough to surround Thalia's pine tree. Peleus is snake-headed, with copper scales and yellow eyes. He's a tame dragon who's devoted and loving to the campers, as Annabeth has previously shown, touching him with no negative reaction from the dragon. Peleus appears to be intensely committed to his task, considering his constant proximity to the golden fleece. Percy Jackson once feared that Peleus would assault Rachel Elizabeth Dare on sight, hinting that he's aggressive toward outsiders. However, considering that he didn't attack her, it's reasonable to infer that Peleus is knowledgeable enough to discriminate between an ally and a foe. Pit Scorpion, a deadly scorpion monster that resides in the underworld and Tartarus. The pit scorpion uses its stinger as its main offensive ability. When a person is stung, a crimson welt emerges immediately, spilling yellow pus. Next, sound fades and vision blurs. Then comes the loss of mobility and vision. If the wound isn't treated immediately, it'll quickly progress to paralysis, unconsciousness, and death. Luke Castellan summons a pit scorpion in the first Percy Jackson book, The Lightning Thief, to attack Percy Jackson after he realizes that Luke is a traitor. Luke warns Percy that the pit scorpion can jump up to a height of 15 feet and kill a grown man in less than 60 seconds with its venom. Fortunately, the nymphs rescue him and Chiron is able to heal the damage. Pegasus, the father of all Pegasi, the steed of Bellerophon, the brother of Chrysaor. Pegasus is one of the widely known creatures in Greek mythology and one of the few monsters that are loyal to Olympus and its gods. According to the mythology, Pegasus is the son of Medusa and Poseidon. Pegasus and his brother Chrysaor emerged from Medusa's beheaded neck stump after the hero Perseus killed her. Eventually, with the help of Athena, the hero Bellerophon caught him. With his assistance, Bellerophon managed to kill the chimera by firing lead into its mouth, slowly suffocating the beast. Bellerophon's growing sense of pride eventually led him to try to soar to the peak of Olympus. Zeus condemned him for his pride when he sent a gadfly to bite Pegasus, causing Pegasus to back off Bellerophon and permanently cripple him. Pegasus completed the journey to Mount Olympus by himself and took his position in Zeus's stables. Satyr. Satyrs, also called fauns by Romans, are beings with a man's upper body and a goat's lower body, replete with hairy goat legs and hooves, goat horns, and goat-like pointed ears. When in public, they're clumsy because they must wear artificial feet and caps, such as Grover's Rasta cap, to avoid drawing unwelcome attention from mortals due to the sound or sight of their hooves or horns. Satyrs, like nymphs, are nature spirits formed when Uranos' blood flowed on fertile soil following his murder by his son Kronos. They're lesser gods of the forest in Greek mythology. Like gods, they can't die but rather shift into plants in a weaker form. They work at Camp Half-Blood and travel the world in quest of Greek demigods. Many satyrs travel to Camp Half-Blood to serve as searchers. In this position, they'll usually search for Pan, the god of the wild. Pan vanished long ago as modern society ravaged the wilderness. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, Grover, Percy, Tyson, Nico, Rachel, and Annabeth discover Pan in a wilderness paradise, where he fades and shortly hands over his title as Lord of the Wild to Grover. Scylla. Scylla is Phorcys and Keto's daughter, and the second of two creatures who resided on one of the sides of a small water channel. The two opposite ends of the straits were just an arrow's length of each other. Therefore, sailors trying to steer clear of Scylla would get too near Charybdis, and vice versa. Scylla was a hideous sea monster with 6 necks that were long, 4 eyes, and ghastly heads adorned with 3 rows of jagged fangs. Her body was made up of a tail and 12 legs that looked like tentacles with 4 to 6 dog-like heads around her waist. Clarice LaRue enters the Sea of Monsters by sailing her battleship between Charybdis and Scylla, which is situated in the present-day Bermuda Triangle. The Daughter of War chooses to travel nearer to Charybdis, but amid the next battle, the ship is driven too near to Scylla, and she captures a few of the zombie Confederate sailors aboard the boat. Scylla takes Percy's rucksack, but he manages to puncture her in the eye when the CSS Birmingham blasts. Scythian Dracani. It's time for supper. Well, it'll be you as the main course if you ever end up being caught in the hands of these deadly creatures. The Scythian Dracani are female reptilian monsters with some characteristics of a human. They're notably featured as foot soldiers in Kronos' Titan army. In Greek mythology, the ancient Scythian Dracani once snatched Hercules' horses and was willing to return them, provided he slept with her. This produced 3 sons, one of whom, named Scythes, became monarch of Scythia. The Scythian Dracani are characterized as humanoid ladies with 2 serpent trunks rather than legs. legs. They've been referred to as dragon women or snake women. Percy characterized their walk as a combination of walking and slithering like walking on living skis. They hiss the letter S when they speak it. Sea serpent. Sea serpent. The sea serpent is a sort of marine creature that's completely or partially serpentine. They're like dracons and dragons, although they don't spew poison, live in water, and have a few other small differences. Poseidon has the power to command sea serpents and monsters. There are numerous sea serpents present in the series, such as when Percy arrives at camp. He begins roaming about and notices a bunch of half-bloods on a Greek trireme, battling a giant orange sea monster in the canoe lake. He describes it as a usual day at camp, or when Deimos deployed a crocodile-headed sea serpent to intimidate people and target his demigod sister, Clarisse LaRue, and Percy. Percy claims that they're big babies when it comes to getting hurt, and observes that sea serpents prefer to live in the sea of monsters. When Oceanus storms Poseidon's palace, he fights with a sea snake as his weapon. A sea monster attempts to attack the palace, but Poseidon destroys it with his trident. Poseidon chats to Percy while fishing after the Second Olympian War and catches a giant green sea monster, but releases it since it's not eating size. Siren. These sweet voices are deadly and will result in your death. The sirens were sea nymphs that would sing with their lovely voices and enchant soldiers to their deaths. Previously, they were Persephone's handmaidens and dearest friends. When she was kidnapped by Hades on the island of Capri, Demeter provided them with the bodies of birds and sent them to help with the search. After discovering no trace of Persephone, they landed on the floral island of Anthemoessa. It was there that they would perform their lovely song, which would entice sailors to their deaths because no one could resist it, and many would drown attempting to get to them. However, the Argonauts were able to pass unhurt because of Orpheus, who played his music and poetry to protect his shipmates from the sirens' voices. Odysseus also managed to pass by, instructing his crew to bind him to the mast, unarm him, and muffle their ears so they could tell when they'd safely passed by, witnessing Odysseus' reaction. After their narrow escape from Circe's island, Annabeth convinces Percy to allow her to hear the sirens, claiming that those who are survivors of the siren song can receive wisdom from them. Percy complies and binds her up with a rope, but she escapes with her knife as Percy forgets to disarm her. Percy dives into the sea in an effort to rescue her. Once he finally gets his hands on her, he notices how the sirens appear to her. Percy suddenly realizes that the siren call can't be heard below the waves and drags Annabeth under the water's surface. When she no longer hears the siren song, she regains control. Scolopendra. Well, that's certainly a weird name. And the monster? Well, it's even weirder. Scolopendra is a large sea creature who's half crayfish and half prawn, and one of Keto and Phorcys' offspring. Percy Jackson dubbed it Shrimpzilla. It was the same length as the Argo II, which was 200 feet long. It resembled a hybrid between a big shrimp and a cockroach, with a pink chitinous shell, a flat crayfish tail, and millipede-like legs. Its face was slimy pink, resembling a huge catfish, with two glassy, lifeless eyes and a gaping, toothless maw. It had a beard with a large number of tentacles emerging from each nostril. Leo Valdez, the Argo II's captain, forgot to switch the detection equipment of the ship from radar to sonar so Festus could identify the monsters that were near the ship. If Leo had made the switch, the Scolopendra's approach wouldn't have caught them off guard. Upon its arrival, the Scolopendra attempted to sink the Argo II. The Scolopendra used its tentacles to shove Percy Jackson down the staircase before wrapping around the legs of Piper McLean and attempting to take her into the sea. A tentacle struck Frank Zang, pushing the demigod overboard. The Scolopendra retreated after experiencing a mouthful of fire from Hazel and Leo's usage of Greek fire. Hazel and Leo finally killed the Scolopendra but fell overboard while doing it. Skeleton. Who doesn't love a good skeleton monster? These days, skeletons as monsters in horror movies are dwindling compared to the older days. Well, these skeletons are not going anywhere. Well, at least until Nico D'Angelo or whoever summoned them reversed their actions. Monsters called skeletons are employed by a number of characters, most famously by Hades and his son Nico D'Angelo. They work either as soldiers or as menial laborers. Some of them can only be eliminated by Hades or his offspring. They're nearly impossible to kill. They're depicted with a variety of weaponry, including swords, firearms, and grenade launchers. When attempting to escape the underworld, Nico uses his power over the dead to put each skeleton he encounters to sleep. However, this causes him to feel extremely weary. Near the end of the last battle, he and Hades summon an army of skeletons to face the Titan army. Later, a group of them is seen building Nico's new cabin at camp. Sphinx. Meet the Riddler of Greek mythology. The Sphinx is a monster that has a lion's body and a woman's head. She's referred to as the master of riddles. The Sphinx is claimed to have guarded the gateway to the Greek city of Thebes, and the only way to gain access is to solve a riddle supplied by the Sphinx. Early storytellers didn't specify the exact riddle asked by the Sphinx, and the one presented below wasn't standardized until late in Greek history. Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, Tyson, and Grover Underwood encounter the Sphinx while exploring the labyrinth. She asks the gang to play Answer That Riddle, a game show-like trap where if they fail, they'll be devoured. Rather than the riddles, the Sphinx questions a number of random trivia questions, which initially perplexes Annabeth since she wants to know what happened to the man-related riddle. The Sphinx claims that everyone knows the answer, so she modified the questions. Annabeth becomes irritated because the questions are so simple. She considers them an insult to her brilliance and declines to answer the Sphinx's riddles. The Sphinx then attacks them, and the group escapes with the help of Grover's woodland magic, and Tyson throws the grading machine at her. It's Stymphalian Bird. The new special on the menu? It's Stymphalian Bird. It sounds delicious, does it not? Well, these nasty little monsters are far from it. These bird-like monsters that look like pigeons have beaks made out of celestial bronze that can tear through flesh. According to Greek mythology, Hercules' sixth labor was to beat the Stymphalian birds. He did it by scaring them into the air with brass bells sent to him by Athena. And as the birds flew away from the swamp where they were resting, Hercules killed many of them with his bow and arrows. Although some fled, they didn't come back to the area they were terrorizing. In the second Percy Jackson book, The Sea of Monsters, during a chariot race, Stymphalian birds swarm Camp Half-Blood and manage to get past the camp's defenses because Thalia's pine tree is withering. Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase utilize Chiron's music on a portable stereo to distract the birds, allowing Apollo's cabin to fire them down. Tantalus supposedly cooks and serves them as the winning camper's prize dinner. Telekinesis. Imagine a seal combined with a dog. That would sum up the appearance of these mysterious monsters capable of forging. Telekinesis have dog-like faces, with black snouts, brown eyes, and pointed ears. Their bodies are slender and black, like seals. They have short legs that are part flipper, half foot, and hands like a human with deadly claws. Percy detailed how combining a Doberman Pinscher, a human infant, and a sea lion would result in a telekinesis. Adult telekinesis can reach a height of 7 feet or more. Telekinesis bark and growl, and they waddle rather than walk. Telekinesis developed metalworking and are claimed to have created the scythe Kronos used to chop up his father, Uranus. They then created a magical trident for Poseidon, which the god wielded to bring down mountains into the sea and create the islands. Their malevolent use of dark magic, especially the creation of a poisonous concoction of river Styx water and sulfur that killed plants and animals, enraged Zeus, who threw them beneath the sea or into the depths of Tartarus. Telekinesis have been characterized as having a dog's head and fish flippers for hands. They're also referred to as fish children. Typhon. Time to play some drum rolls because Typhon is making an appearance. Typhon, who's also known as Typhoeus, is the earth goddess Gaia's final and most powerful offspring, often known as the storm giant or father of all monsters. His wife Echidna, the mother of all monsters, and his father is Protogenoi Tartarus. Even the gods fear him, and Aeolus particularly despises him since defeating him releases thousands of Venti, making Aeolus's work much more difficult. He's the most fearsome opponent the Olympians have ever encountered. Typhon's exact appearance is unclear, as he's constantly seen in The Last Olympian, enveloped by storm clouds. Typhon looks like a huge freak storm and tornadoes that wreak havoc on anything that they come across to mortals. Demigods that are immune or very resistant to the mist see him as a massive shadowy form made of darkish clouds. Typhon, Gaia's strongest offspring, possesses apocalyptic power, surpassing all Olympians, Titans, and giants. The mere fact that he was there was enough to scare the Olympians, who fled to Egypt with the exception of Zeus. Although the gods no longer feared Typhon the second time he awakened in The Last Olympian, they were still unable to weaken him, as even the lightning of Zeus only caused Typhon to fall slightly. Ventus. Ever think about those nasty thunderstorms that ruin your day? Well, now meet the culprits behind them. The creatures of chaos that Aeolus confines to the hollows of his island are known as storm spirits, or anemoi thuolai, tempest winds in Greek, and venti, winds, in Latin. They came into being after Zeus, and then Poseidon vanquished Typhon. In the series Heroes of Olympus, they work for Gaia. Storm spirits take two forms. Which option they choose is determined by how chaotic they are. They can take on the appearance of horses or humans. When they're in the form of horses, they have manes that crackle with electricity and bodies the color of dark storm clouds. In their other form, they look to be humanoid beings with misty wings and eyes that sparkle with electricity. Storm spirits' appearance is also determined by who sired them. For example, spirits born by Notus were characterized as made of fire, sand, and a hot thunderstorm. Zombie. What monster list would be complete without a zombie on it? Zombies are undead beings made through the reanimation of a corpse. They're also referred to as Ricolaci, Immortuus, Lamia, Nuntius, and Jiangxi. The Greeks called them as vrikolakai, a mortal who scratched by Eurynamos contracts a wasting sickness, and upon dying, they resurrect as vrikolakai. Clarice LaRue's father gives her the CSS Birmingham, a Confederate battleship manned by zombies for exploring the Sea of Monsters. In the Blood of Olympus book, Nico D'Angelo calls on Jules Albert, a dead French stock car racer, to chauffeur him, Dakota, and Layla past Octavian's forces to the front lines. Dryads. Dryads are nymphs that preside over trees or plants in nature. Every dryad is born with a specific tree to watch over. They reside in woods, valleys, and cool grottos. They're members of a god's entourage, such as Pan and Persephone. A dryad lives either in or near a tree. The life of a dryad is related to that of a tree. In other words, the dryad lives as long as the tree does. The dryad will bring down any mortal who attempts to harm its tree. And to top that off, the gods will punish anyone who causes a dryad's death. Dryads are stunning humanoids with an elf-like appearance. They have tree-like limbs and can be green. Nymphs. Nymphs, like satyrs, emerged after Uranos' blood flowed on fertile soil following his murder by his very own child, Kronos. Initially, there had been 9 nymphs under the leadership of Hagno. They, along with Amalthea and the Melii, helped Rhea safeguard and raise a young Zeus. Nymphs are primarily responsible for the animals and plants in their respective domains, and were intimately affiliated with gods of nature such as Poseidon, Zeus, Artemis, Demeter, Pan, and Dionysus. They live in groves and mountains, among rivers and springs, in forests, valleys, and chilly grottos. They're frequently pursued by gods or satyrs who are lovesick because of their beauty. There are various nymphs, and every one of the numerous types has its own name based on what they influence over. Marvelous verdict, and that marks the end of yet another marvelous video. From the mystical Sphinx to the poisonous Hydra, we've explored the terrors of every half-blood that walks the earth. While some of them serve Olympus and others run free in the wild, these creatures are not all friendly. We hope you enjoyed this journey through the world of monsters and creatures, so stay tuned for more exciting info from the lore of Percy Jackson. Which creature among these did you like the most? Was there anything specific about them that captured your curiosity? Let us know all about it in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. It means the world to us when you help us grow. Until next time, guys, keep your eyes and ears open in the real world. That's where the monsters are. Have a good one. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.